What does a real stand your ground law do? That's what we're talking about today on the AK Show. This is Alex AK Kincaid. Welcome to the AK Show. Gun owners usually take some training about how to avoid the fight. That's our number one goal. We don't want to take human life, but we do want to be able to protect ourselves and the people we care about. So number one rule is we're supposed to be situationally aware. Pay attention to what's going on around you. If you can take a different path, if you see something up in front of you that's concerning, go a different way, even turn around. Avoid the fight, number one rule of responsible gun ownership. It's not, however, always possible. And if you don't have the opportunity to implement your situational awareness training, you may find yourself in a situation where you either have to defend your life with deadly force or be killed. What does a stand your ground law really protect? And when you look on the internet and you start doing research about what a stand your ground law is, which states even have them, you're going to find information that is all over the place. Stand your ground is no different from any other gun rights / gun control area of the law where people are spreading misinformation, and anyone who can type 3 words into Google can find that misinformation. I want to read you a couple of things that I found on the internet that to me are slightly amusing but are also extremely concerning with respect to people actually reading this garbage and thinking it's the truth. The anti-gunners call them shoot first laws. They say that people don't have the duty to retreat and they can get away with, quote, murder if they can convince a judge that they were in fear for their lives. I found one site in particular where there was someone who touted himself as having appeared on CNN. He was putting himself out there as some kind of an expert. He wasn't even a lawyer, but he's trying to explain to people who may read his site on the internet about what a stand your ground law is all about. And he said, a stand your ground law lets people shoot, gun owners shoot unarmed people. That was his premise about what a stand your ground law does. So I'm here today to help explain the truth and the facts, which is what the AK Show is all about. What is a stand your ground law? Well, depending on how you define it, anywhere from 22 to 35 states in the United States of America have some kind of a law that is designed to protect people if they have to make a split-second life or death decision about whether or not to use deadly force. If I'm walking down an alley one night and somebody approaches me with a knife and says, give me $20 or I'm going to cut you up, I don't have to look around and decide if it's possible for me to run away and get away safely. And if somebody's at me with a knife, odds are 0 that I'm going to get away safely. But I don't even have to consider that in a state where there's a real stand your ground law, because that law says when faced with that deadly situation, I'm looking at imminent, serious bodily harm or death. I could just pull out my gun and pull the trigger in that moment and defend my life. I can meet force with force and protect myself in that situation. That's the basic premise behind stand your ground. Stand your ground and meet force with force and defend yourself. And you're not supposed to even get into a discussion about whether or not you could have gotten away. Well, unfortunately, what happens in some states that don't have what I would call a strong stand your ground law is that there will be an arrest, there will be a charge, there will be a prosecution for murder in a lot of situations where a stand your ground law maybe should apply. But the person winds up going to trial anyways, being accused of taking life when they shouldn't have. And the people bringing the charges, the prosecutor, maybe a prosecutor who doesn't like guns, we've seen them often enough, goes into court and argues to the jury of your peers that, you know what, there was this avenue of escape. there was a path right over there. You could have run through a different alley. You could have gotten inside a restaurant. There was a car that you could have hid behind and screamed. Maybe you should have blown a rape whistle. Whatever the nonsense is going to be that you should have done under the circumstances, they will argue to the jury that, yes, our laws say that you do not have to turn and run, but this person could have. And therefore, what they did in pulling out their firearm and pulling the trigger was unreasonable. They had another avenue of escape. Our laws say they don't have to turn and run, but they could have, and therefore you, the jury, should find that their actions were unreasonable and they should be convicted of murder. So they're backdooring in evidence about all the other options, whether you were aware of them or not at the time that you pulled your firearm, and arguing not that stand your ground doesn't apply, but the action, the behavior that you took was not reasonable under the circumstances, that the jury may have chosen differently and a reasonable person would have chosen differently, and therefore that life should not have been taken and the person should be convicted of some kind of criminal act. Stand your ground laws, in other words, don't always protect the people that they are designed to protect. And so what some states are doing is they're taking action. And Florida is a model state for gun owners in a lot of ways in the laws that they have passed. They've been very proactive in the last few years in making sure that gun owners are as protected as they can be by way of statute. And so Florida has a very protective stand your ground law. It allows you not only to meet force with force, but even to pull out your firearm and fire a warning shot if you feel that that will help protect you and save life. It's still not good enough. And so this year they're proposing a change that would make things even more protective for gun owners. And one of those changes is that there would be a hearing before there was ever a trial of someone who defended themselves by pulling out their firearm and pulling that trigger. And what would happen is the person would go before the judge and they would say, "Judge, the stand your ground law protects me in this circumstance. I was facing serious bodily harm or imminent death, and the stand your ground law of our state says I did not have to turn and run. I should not have to take the time to decide that, because in the time that I take to even try to figure out if I could get away safely, I could be killed." Then it's up to the prosecution to prove to the judge that for some reason the stand your ground law does not apply. That's a big burden on a prosecutor, because they're going to have to argue something along the lines of you were breaking into someone else's house or you were committing some kind of crime yourself, and otherwise that stand your ground law would protect you under the new terms of this Florida statute. It hasn't passed yet, but I'm using it as an example to show how a real stand your ground law should in fact be designed. It can't just say you have the ability to stand your ground, you don't have to turn and run. It has to say, if your stand your ground law is really going to protect gun owners in your state, it has to say you are protected in a situation where you are facing imminent serious bodily harm or death, and you do not have to consider any other options. If you are facing that imminent death or bodily harm, you get to pull your handgun, whatever firearm you may have. If it's a rifle, but usually it's going to be a handgun. You can defend yourself, you can meet force with force, and on top of it, the jury never gets to hear evidence of all the other options that may have been available to you. Because if you didn't know about those options, or if you didn't have time to consider them, why should the jury? And that is what a real stand your ground law does. I'm Alex A.K. Kincaid. Thanks for watching The AK Show. This is Alex A.K. Kincaid, and thank you for watching The AK Show.